Hello there, and welcome to the WeChat Tech podcast. I'm joined today by Ben Link. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, Ben. Great to have me, and always happy to meet a fellow Ben.
Indeed, Ben is a good name, so good start, right? So I guess Ben, for those who don't know who you are, can you give a intro about who you are, where it all began, and that sort of thing?
Okay. So I have been doing tech type things for about 20 years now. Had a fairly interesting career, I think. At least it's kept me entertained. Um, Stretching from one man IT show to various departments of big enterprise to a little bit of Silicon Valley culture and back around. So yeah, it's just been a wild ride of playing with tech toys.
Nice, fair play. And where did you grow up, Ben? Where were you born? Where did you grow up, and that sort of
Um,
thing?
Most of my life I've been here in South Carolina.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
okay, lovely area. I've been told. I haven't been there yet, but I plan to one day. Isn't it quite a flat landscape where you are, or?
Yeah, we're sort of in the middle of the state, so we have both extremes here. We have mountains. They're not particularly large mountains, but they are mountainous on the western side, and then the further east, you of course get down to the coast. So we're kind of in that central area between, um, I would say, mostly flat land.
Nice, good stuff. And how did you get into tech, Ben? What was your first role? How did you get into it? Was it university? Was it college? Or was it a complete accident? How did you move your career into this area?
So yeah, technology has always been the place I wanted to be. Like even from very small, the first time I encountered a computer, I think it was an Apple IIc. Um, I grew up playing games and experimenting with things. Went up to like a Mac Plus, and then grew into some of the Power Mac series. And then
Oh, wow.
my first Windows PC was actually probably a Windows 98 box, like Pentium 3 territory. And so it's always been part of who I was. I love to play with those things. And then when I got through school and started looking for what am I going to do with my life, it was just the natural thing. Like I should probably do things I enjoy doing. And so that's where I went.
And making money from what you love doing is like the mix that, you know, everyone wants, right, in life. So
Yeah,
passion and work for you mixed together,
for
you can't
sure.
go wrong, can you? So it's a almost like a place where you can elevate yourself as a person as well and get to that goal that you want to hit eventually. Um, I guess Ben, at the moment, so you're like an engineer, right? Engineer, I use term very loosely because you do lots of different things in your job, and you have been through a different career paths in terms of seniority, but also you went to DevRel for a little bit as well.
Mhm.
So, what do you do day to day? What's your job, and what tools do you play with, and that sort of thing?
So the sticker on the tin says senior cloud analyst. I joke that I like to analyze clouds. They're white and fluffy like me, and there's not a lot of actual analysis of clouds in what I personally do every day. I think of myself mostly as a developer advocate who's masquerading as a platform guy. So the official like thing that I do for the boss is to manage our company's AWS footprint. There's a team of about 5 of us that are responsible for the platform level things, the ways that we push it out and make it easy for the developer teams around us to use it. And so that's our sort of primary responsibility. But the thing that I'm most passionate about is taking care of that developer community and helping them in learning not only our platform, but just how to get work done in general.
And is that the internal community within your company or the wider company, the wider org?
Yeah, in this particular role, it's all internally facing. I've done a little bit of both. Um, I like both sides equally, but as long as I'm taking care of developers, that's what I'm most excited about.
Nice, fair enough. So I guess what one thing you have done then as well is you have moved, you did move into a DevRel role for a short period of time. I think for you, we obviously spoke before, right? About a month or two ago, we first spoke and
Mhm.
we had a really good chat about the DevRel part of it and how integrates with community and how you like to operate as well in work too. So what is DevRel for those who don't know what it is?
So that's a shortened portmanteau developer relations. The general gist of developer relations um, sort of has the thing we tell management we do and the thing that we actually love to do. So the thing we love to do is to be in the weeds with developers who are trying to get some understanding of a product or some understanding of a technique. And we come alongside as a way to assist people in that. The thing we tell the boss we do so that we can keep getting paid tends to be more like marketing focused. It's about building communities within, whatever tech spaces we can find as a channel to start bringing people into our product, whatever company we work for or product we're responsible for.
Wow, that's quite a wide role then, a DevRel is in general, but also an engineer, a cloud analyst, or as you're told you are from a job title perspective.
Yeah.
They're both very wide realms, aren't they? So I think operating in both, as you do at the moment, I guess you do a little bit of both in a way because you're internally
Mhm.
supporting those developers to build communities and to help things improve from a
For
system
sure.
standpoint. Um, do you enjoy the variety or do you find it quite stressful? What are your thoughts around the amount of work you have to do in terms of the sphere of the whole thing?
I guess it's a little bit about my brain wiring, but I tend to enjoy variety like that. If I came in every morning and did the exact same things for the entire day and then closed up shop at the end of the day and went home, I would not be a happy camper. What I need in my life is the frenetic, the strange, the weird. I prefer to operate in those spaces. I like stuff that hasn't really been figured out yet. That's the attraction for me of developer relations in general. Is I'm usually going into a situation that I don't fully understand, and I have to grok what's happening to this person quickly, and then figure out how I can help them. It's a lot of that hacking through the jungle and not necessarily knowing where the path is, but kind of trying to blaze a trail for whoever's coming behind.
It sounds a bit like how I work. We call it organized chaos, where I like to be doing about 50 things at once.
Mhm.
I can't sit there and focus on one thing for 2 hours, 3 hours. I find it really hard. So for me, I probably have some sort of ADHD, I think, some strain of that potentially, because I just can't do one thing for that long. So when it comes to work, I love to be doing this, doing that, obviously building communities and then doing recruitment and doing different things. So
Yeah.
podcasts as we are now. So I couldn't ever do one thing. It doesn't satisfy me. I have to be doing different things. Yeah, I think we're both linked in that way. Excuse the pun, then. Um,
Wow, that's
so I
awesome.
guess, yeah, taking it all back to where your career began. So your career began at Blue Cross Blue Shield, correct?
Well, actually, I had one tech role before that, which was as a one-man IT department in an iron foundry.
Oh
Um,
wow.
Yeah, if you wanna get into tech, manufacturing is a surprisingly interesting way to start that journey. Maybe I'm a little biased based on my history, but I really loved, like, the concept of people going into a place of work and making things, and as the tech guy, I wasn't really responsible for making the things that we produced. I was responsible for making sure I was enabling those people to make things successfully. So in a foundry, you're talking a lot about the temperature that the iron is melted to before it's molded into something, before it's cast. You're talking about the chemistry that's involved in the process, how much other elements, tin and chromium and vanadium, exist within this mixture of steel or iron. There's all these factors that people are focused on, and as the tech guy, your job is to enable them. You're giving them tools that help them do the job. I found that to be a really fun place to learn things because everything was practical. One of the key components there is, of course, the ambient temperatures. When you're melting iron, the room that you're in gets to 120 Fahrenheit, 50 C,
Wow.
right? And so you're you're designing a PC that's going to be here for this person to be able to manage their workflow, but it has to live in that environment. Your mistake means the computer melts, and there's something about that, the finality of it, that is like, okay, I really have to work on solving this problem, and being able to see that and take it end to end is a lot of fun too.
Wow. That sounds like a really sort of not weird, but different sort of introduction to tech than most. Most
Very
people sit in a room, Ben, it's 23 degrees Celsius, and you're sort of, you're comfortable, you're sitting down in the office, and you haven't got sweltering, heat coming out and making you sweat when you're building PCs. So did you learn hardware first, or was it software always for you? Like, what did you first learn? Because lots of people start from like networking and that side of things, but what did you first learn?
So the thing I was most like in love with throughout college and education side of things was software. I was a programmer. Like I wanted to build things. I got into the whole idea actually on a programmable calculator, one of the Texas Instruments line. Writing little video games that I should have been not playing in math class, but let's not talk about that. Yeah. That was the intro to the journey, and then it was, wait, there's all these other things that I have to learn that are, ancillary to what I'm doing. It's all connected, and I have to figure out how to make all of that work. So the foundry, again, was a place where you are going to sometimes be running cable across the plant floor. You're sometimes going to be coding up something that's going to be on the company website, or maybe it's something that's running day to day. How do I manage the Active Directory permissions for all the plant managers and things? So the variety was really what won me over.
I think that makes or breaks someone as well, doesn't it? Because you have to learn so fast and think on your feet almost as well. If you haven't got the ability to pivot, which is a word I use quite a lot in my career as well. If you can't pivot and you can't evolve with the situation at hand, it's really hard to actually go and then make something of yourself, especially early on in your career. How did you navigate through that challenge of sort of having to self learn and self teach yourself those AD stuff, and then networking, website building, programming, firefighting?
It was just kind of a journey of learning to communicate well with the people around me. So when you're dealing with plant management, you set expectations early. Hey, I don't necessarily know how this works. I'm going to be spending some time heads down today understanding it and figuring it out. And anytime you're rolling out changes, you're making sure to communicate across the board. Hey, this is happening this week, guys, because they're worried about molten iron in a ladle on the floor someplace. They don't really care what's going on with their computers. They just want it to be there when they need it. And so everything that you can do to support them and make sure they have what they need and find ways to make it work in their favor is really the important part of that journey.
So you've gone from starting your career in manufacturing, shall we say, as the industry.
Sure.
Now you're more enterprise, right? So you're in a large business with a large developer influence and community, a lot of
Mhm.
tech people in the team as well. Um, how has your tenure sort of treated you in enterprise and corporate tech? And what has it taught you the most about life as a whole?
I would say that the thing I've learned through the experience is that none of us is really as dumb as all of us. When you start to scale a company to that size and it becomes the enterprise, you lose a lot of what made you special when you were small and scrappy. Um, and it's important for us, like, we can still salvage that. We don't have to lose it, but it happens naturally if you don't pay attention to it. And so, the act of keeping those communication channels open between different people is something that you have to do intentionally. And that's really like the thing that has been the hallmark of the rest of my career. When I came into that enterprise space for the first time, it shocked me because I was now in this lane, and you stay in this lane and you don't exit your lane. You stay there. You do that. You don't do this stuff over here. And I was used to the idea of just hopping between because there was nobody else to delegate it to. So I'm going to do it all. And to be restricted in that way felt really weird and really odd. And that was when I discovered the DevOps movement, where people were saying, hey, maybe these lanes aren't as important as we were led to believe. And so it was an easy bandwagon to jump on.
So I think that the word DevOps, Ben, I think we have some nice LinkedIn interactions on my posts. I do a lot of posts, as you see, on polls and different things to get people engaged and talking to each other. Sorry, as well.
Mhm.
Um, what does actually DevOps mean to you? What do you class DevOps as? Is it a movement? Is it a way of thinking? Is it a tool? What do you think it is?
I think there's probably a part of each of those things that could be in the definition, but I would probably lean most on the way of thinking, because it's getting away from the fetishizing of setting up roles that are completely separate from each other. People who design organizations and like do that stuff constantly seem to be really excited about the idea of saying, well, this person does this, that's it. And so now I have a slot that I can put them in, and that's where they live. And then on this other side, this person does this other thing, and that's all they do. But people aren't like that. Humans don't work that way. And rather than fighting against it by, making the rules more rigid and inflexible, we should be looking at ways of capitalizing on that, like the creative things that I can't count the number of times throughout my career in the enterprise space that I drew on some of those um, Foundry experiences where I was like trying to mm, I was effectively winging the situation. Like, I don't know how this is going to work, and I'm just making it up as I go along. But the solution that I came to was something that I could apply in another situation later. Um, that lateral thinking is really the value of the DevOps experience, because when devs are left alone in a corner, they do things in a certain way. When the ops guys are left alone in their corner, they do things a certain way. But there's so much that we could learn from each other if we just cross-pollinated.
Yeah, it's funny because I think now when companies hire for like a software engineer, for example, or developer, shall we say, a lot of those developers now expect to do a lot more than before, which I think is sort of what you're saying, that people need to be able to do more than just one thing, which I think is really important because then they can also connect with the DevOps guys, the platform guys, the ops guys as well, and they can all have a little bit of knowledge in different areas and they can really work together a lot better. Um, do you think that's improved over the years? That sort of like variety of skills that developers have and also the sort of ops guys have as well?
I think it has in some organizations, in others, maybe not so much. It really comes down to the kind of culture that you're working with and the way that leadership does the leading. It's very easy for people to sort of fall back on the way we've always done it. And that just becomes the mantra for all of it is we just keep doing this way. The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon Cooper, this is the chair I sit in, I sit here, this is it. Um, that that leads us to a place where we're not actually thinking anymore. We're just sort of following the rule book. And nothing has ever been innovated by following a rule book. The general definition of innovation is doing things that are outside of the ordinary. And that's really what we're looking for. Like, that's what we keep hearing from the top layer of an organization is we want to be more innovative, but we want to do it by following all the rules. And they haven't really necessarily always connected the dots to say, you know, this is actually not going to work this way. We're going to have to think about things different. When you start to break down those barriers, I think that's the exciting part. Stuff starts to happen, and it's easy to get on board as long as you don't come behind it and kill it.
It's great points there, Mother. Really good points. I think the point you made there about almost going against the grain and trying to be a bit creative with how you approach a task or problem or solution or whatever you're going to build. Think about Apple. Like, where would Apple be if they didn't do what they did back in 2000 or even 1990s, right? They first came on the scene, or 1980s when
Mhm.
Steve Jobs started the company. where would they be today if they just kept following what everyone else was doing in the tech space? Like, these companies wouldn't be at the top of the top. Amazon, when they came onto the marketplace sort of area, shall we say, these are all new things that hadn't been done before. So if you're
Yeah.
just doing the same thing as everyone else, you're never ever going to get to the top of your field. I don't think. If you're a follower, you're never going to be the trendsetter. So I think it's important to do things yourself and try it out, fail miserably. That's what I've done in my career, and then you go and you do it again and again and again until you find the right recipe, and then you can go and do it right.
And I think we've been conditioned not to understand what failure really is. Failure to me is an exciting thing because, hey, we tried a thing and it didn't work. We never learn things when they're successful the first try. Like if you just one shot and it rolls and it's perfect, uh, you didn't learn anything from that. You got lucky. And as nice as it is to get lucky sometimes and just have everything work smoothly on the first try, if you really want to grow and understand a system and be of value later on when the chips are down, you have to live in failure. You have to live in constant failure. And, the successes will be sweet because they're so rare, but you're really like failing over and over and over and over on everything. And every once in a while you get to bring your head up for air because you got to win.
I think, yeah, failure is not a bad thing. Unless you let it defeat you, then that is a bad thing. It's about mindset as well. If you're happy to fail and then try again, I think
Hmm.
there's so much value in that. If you're gonna fail and just first try it, no, I'm not doing that again. That's just the wrong attitude to have, and you're not gonna learn much being like that. So I think you've got to come back stronger and learn from your last mistake, and then be better this time. I've made so many mistakes the last 10 years of my career. It's like spent so many, too many. But, these things, ultimately, you lose business deals and stuff from them, but you wouldn't ever do that again because it didn't work out very well for you. So
You
I
find a
think,
better path. Yeah.
yeah, you can't hold on to things for too long. You've got to move on and just try again. So I agree with you there. I guess when it comes to developer experience, Ben, without the buzzword of DevEx, trying to get away from that, I suppose. It's such a DevOps, DevEx, DevRel. They're all such buzzwords now in what is a really wide industry within tech.
Mhm.
Um, what does DevEx look like, or developer experience look like, sorry, day to day?
All right. Well, I'll preface this by saying I'm not being paid for this advertisement. This is purely from the heart. But I just finished reading a brand new release book called Frictionless by Dr. Nicole Forsgren and Abhi Noda from DX. And I love the way that they position this because it's sort of like measuring developer experience by looking at its absence. It's at least that's the way I've understood what they're saying, and it's a measure of the friction experienced when you're just trying to get something done. And so when you look for that friction, that's a lack of developer experience. Somebody's trying to do something and they're hitting hurdles. They're being blocked by processes or by tool malfunctions or whatever it is that's getting in the way. But that friction, the stuff that keeps me from just doing what I know I got to get done, that's sort of the way that you look at developer experience.
Well, what are sort of the common misconceptions, Ben, about developer experience?
I think the first one for me is that it isn't tied to revenue. Like the biggest challenge you have when you go to the boss and say, "Hey, we need to fix our developer experience," is they go, "And where's the ROI in that?" Like developers are doing fine. They're over there in their corner. You're obviously some kind of touchy-feely DEI loving freak and you don't understand that we have a business to run. And that's the way they sort of dismiss the entire concept. But at the core, like the only way anything ever gets done in a business anymore is when the developers are doing it, right? Like software's eating the world, as it's famously said. The software had to come from developers. If if you have a poor developer experience, that's the foundation by which your entire business moves. And I think dismissing it as something that's not directly tied to our revenues is a mistake. The other thing that I would put out there as maybe a misconception is that it's just tied to capex. Like I have to go buy more things, right? I need a tool. I need a subscription to a service or whatever it is. And that's kind of true. Sometimes you do, but not necessarily immediately. The way I like to think about this is if you've ever met that guy who picks up a new hobby and then like the day after he decides he's going to start this new hobby, he buys all the premium equipment. And then all of that equipment just sits in the closet and rusts because he never learns how to do it, how to use it. That's us when we buy technology tools. I might need to redo that one.
That's fine. All part of the natural look, Ben. And what everyone coughs.
Yeah. Apparently, I'm choking on air.
Oh no. Oh God.
Oh, excuse me.
That's all right. Take your time.
All right.
You good?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your eyes are watering, Ben.
Yeah. I don't know what got into that, but it.
No. Maybe some carbon monoxide, Ben, from the looks of it.
Yeah. I don't know. If I pass out, just send an ambulance. It's fine.
I will do. I will do. I was thinking your wife can't even come down, can she? Because she's recovering, your poor wife. So she'll be able to come and help you.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work today.
Oh God. Oh no.
I'm on my
What were you
own.
saying then before you had the coughing fit? Anyway.
All right. So I think the other major misconception that I've run into is that developer experience is just tied to CapEx. It's let me go purchase a tool or a subscription or something like I've got to go buy a thing to make the developers happy. And that might be true to some extent. There are cases where you do need to buy better tools, but it's not necessarily the first step in the journey. And the way I like to think about this is if you ever met that guy who picks up a new hobby and the very day that he decides he's going to do it, he goes buys all the premium equipment. And then all of that equipment sits in his closet and rusts because he never learns how to use any of it and he abandons the hobby. Like that's us buying technology tools. We'll go buy another thing and put it on the shelf and we'll have some huge initiative and a big implementation rollout and everybody's excited about it. And then we forget about it completely after about 2 months. And I don't know what we accomplished other than blowing a huge amount of money on something.
So does that mean it's a process to get this developer experience better? Does it mean that there's certain tools in place to make that easier for developers to do their job? If so, what tools do you recommend? And as well, culture, Ben, as well. I think building a culture
Mm.
right from the very top, where the CEO or the CTO is really pushing this as a company-wide initiative to improve developer experience. Three-part question. I can repeat it if you need me to. I guess, yeah, but is there a process? If so, what is it? Is there tools that help with it? If so, what are they? And is there a culture that aligns with it? Does that come from the top, the bottom, or the middle, or, you know?
So I'll answer the last one first.
Sure.
Does it come from the top, the bottom, or somewhere in the middle? And I think the answer is if it comes from the top, you're very lucky because that means somebody at the top still has some sort of emotional connection to what it means to work in this organization. If you're in a huge enterprise with 15 layers between the CEO and the people at the bottom of the food chain, um, you will rapidly lose that connection because the people who get way up into the posh offices don't necessarily remember what got them here after a while. They don't go home and write code every day like some of us do. And so that disconnect, it usually means that this has to come from the ground up because the people at the bottom are the ones who feel this kind of pain. As far as what tools to use or what tools are valuable, the first ones are actually completely free. They're your ears. you're listening to developers and you're asking them what's wrong, and you're doing something about what they say. So that's the first thing before you ever think about, well, I'm going to have to put a bunch of money in the budget to do this developer experience thing. You should start by just reaching out, just listening to your staff and understanding what it is that drives them.
You're very
R-
passionate then, aren't you? Very, very passionate about developer experience. Very, very. I can see it
Yes, very
through
much
the
so.
screen. You know, even though we haven't met in person, I can see it, body language and the way you speak about it. It's something that's very high on your list of things that you want to achieve is improving that developer experience. So,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think a lot of that stems from my nature. Like I tend to be the kind of person who likes to help out. I don't know if you ever realized this. Are you familiar with the etymology of our name?
Ben,
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't think I am. I probably
Okay.
should be.
So Ben, short for Benjamin, is from the Hebrew. It's from the son of my right hand. It's a clunky way of saying this is my right hand man, right? So the idea is that it's a helper, and if you have any sort of interest in nominative determinism, then like from the moment I was named, it's become part of my psyche, part of who I am, my identity, to be a helper. And the thing that I do in basically every situation that I find myself is go find somebody who's doing something cool and try to help them. Look at what it is that gets in their way. Look at what keeps them from doing something even greater and try to remove those blocks. And so when I think of developer experience, I'm just applying that helper attitude at scale because I meet incredible developers who are insanely talented, who are absolutely hamstrung by processes and procedures or business decisions. There's tons of things that get in the way of people just being able to be their best self. And so I think that's where this all comes from, the passion, the fire behind it is that I want to help them. I want them to be able to realize what they're capable of, and this is my way of contributing to that.
Fair play then. No, it's really good to hear that people still want to help others in this day and age. I think there's a lot of, people looking out for themselves, which is fair enough. I understand it. But it's good to have people that are there for others, without asking for something back. I think that's the key thing. Are you the type of person to go and help someone that for the sake of helping them? Or you wanted to have something back in return, which I think a lot of the time in, politics or banking, that can happen quite often, and business as well. Even I meet CEOs a lot, and some are lovely and some not so lovely. And I see it a lot where, they want something in return for your help. So it's not just like they help you for because they're being nice. Normally, it's to get something back in return. I think for your type of job, it is genuinely just because you want to improve the space you're in.
Mhm.
So it's commendable. Then. It's commendable. Tooling, then, in terms of tooling, which tools do you recommend that can really help with developer experience? What can you implement in your company or in everyone else's company that's watching?
It's going to be a little different for every organization because you have to deal with cultural things. You have to deal with the way that we've built the business up over time. You're going to have to deal with regulations and things like that in some businesses. What you end up looking for are sort of the primary places to start have to do with the way that you document your work. Is it easy to bring somebody new onto your team? Is it easy for them to find information when they don't know it off the top of their heads? I see that a lot where a business has a certain way of doing things. They have a certain procedure for whatever thing that you're trying to accomplish. But if it's not written down anywhere and there's no way for me to discover what that procedure is other than asking somebody else, then I don't have the ability to become part of the culture easily. I don't I don't learn the ins and outs of dealing with the way things work, because it's not accessible. And when it's not accessible, that's exclusionary. And so if I'm being excluded from it, what's my incentive as a person to be part of this organization any longer? So in that way, you end up finding that DevEx is directly tied to employee retention. If you're having trouble keeping people on staff, that's a place you can look. What is it that keeps them from wanting to be excited about what they're doing here?
When it comes to hiring, Ben, on that same note, by the way, great points there. If when you're looking to move on to another company, not you per se, then, but as an engineer or developer or similar, is documentation something that you look at? Do you ask during the interview process about, can I see your documentation, or have you got documentation? Is that something you take a serious consideration for? I've never actually asked that before, so in my career, so I'm quite keen to understand if that's something that's really important before you jump ship and move on.
For a software engineer, absolutely. I think that ignoring the state of documentation in a business can be a serious problem, because the number one thing that a developer wants to do is be self-sufficient. Like we like to build things, we like to tinker with them, and we don't like to be meddled with. So something else you learn through like the developer relations world is it's really just marketing, but done in a way that makes it feel more authentic. Because when the marketing department shows up and they're not super technical people and they're trying to sell something to a developer, we sniff that out. We know right away that you
They
haven't
want money.
actually used your product at scale. You haven't implemented this anywhere. You're just trying to sell me something. And it immediately sours the engineering persona, which is why DevRel exists, because the idea behind it is to have, genuine software engineer, hardware engineer, whoever, fits in your space, who have done this work, who are authentically like, we have the same battle wounds and scars that you do, and we're showing you this is the way that you do it. We can get in the weeds with you. When you miss that, when there isn't that authenticity, it becomes really hard to sell that to somebody. And so, yeah, if I'm interviewing with a company, I at least want to know about what it is that they think about documentation. I may not ask to see the docs if it's like, possibly internal stuff that they can't
Yeah.
share. But what I want to know is, how do you prioritize that work? Do you have a documentation team who's managing it? Do you have technical writers on staff? Or are you just telling the devs, oh, and you need to document? Because that's not going to end well. Yeah, I mean, you'll get some good content occasionally, but it's not a priority. It's not something that's being focused on and attended to. And that puts you in a bad space because you're just assuming that it's being taken care of and it's going to catch up with you later.
That leads us on then to developer relations, DevRel. So great little bridge there, Ben, into that sort of questioning, I suppose, or
Sure.
world. So you've sort of dabbled, haven't you? You had a role there as a DevRel for a year or so,
Mhm.
roughly. Um, you're very passionate about community building, as we've already discussed internally. We've also been very lucky to welcome you as part of our community as well, at the DevOps Society recently, which is great to have you sort of as part of it as well.
Yes, thank you.
So what makes developer education work,
Um,
in your
out of the
opinion, by the way?
out of the gate, the ability to not have to educate the developer directly. Um, when I'm trying to learn something, I don't want to sit down necessarily with somebody who's, potentially got an interest in selling this to me. I want to sit down with either a peer who just wants to help build something and we're hanging out together, or I want to do it on my own in my own private space where I can just be like, hey, I'm going to watch a video. I'm going to go read some public docs, whatever. But for me, the engineer wants to go kick the tires. And one place that I've seen a lot of marketing teams fall down when they're dealing with engineering is that they'll try to run webinars. It's like, well, let's have a big webinar and get 100 people on this call, and we'll walk you through how you do this thing in our app. Okay, but for an engineer, that's not interesting. I want to have my hands on it. I want to have my copy where I can go play around and plug things in and
Yeah.
rewire stuff and update the config and see if I can break it and things like that, because that's how we learn. We're kinesthetic.
So I guess, Ben, on that same topic then, how would a content be intriguing? Because as you know, Ben, we have a YouTube channel as part of DevOps Society. We're
Mhm.
doing it just to give you guys, the engineers, as much as we can give you to learn, to collaborate, etc. What type of content would be really interesting for you and also your peers? If it wasn't going to be your colleagues or your peers directly, but people in our community that do it that you don't maybe know yet, what type of content will be good for you?
The things that I like the most, the things that I engage with the most are actually, there's a few categories. Like one of them would be interview situations like we're doing here, being able to hear somebody's stories. Humans are very much tied to storytelling. Throughout our history, that's been the way that we communicated with each other, was to tell stories. And so hearing an interesting story, hearing what somebody was working on, or what made them tick, or what they learned from some weird experience, those are great stories to follow up on. There's also a vein, sometimes I'm not necessarily interested in listening to a story today, but if we can go build something together. um, one of the things that I do on my own channel is a live build, and it's pseudo live. It's simu live, I guess is the term they use, right? Because I did prepackage things. I did learn how it works first, but then I go through the exercise of building something and talking about how it works and why it works, as part of the video. And that's great because when I'm consuming that kind of content, I can watch for a little bit and then pause and go try it myself. And either I'm going to be able to succeed based on what I just saw, or I'm going to go, "Ooh, let me go rewind that and watch it again." But that's the experience of a developer in general. We're going to sit down and play with something. I watched, for instance, this last week was all of the Claudebot, Moltbot, OpenClaw news that was spread all over all social media about how this thing's going to take over the world. I pretty much turned off social media and went and downloaded an open claw and started playing with it, because that's how I'm going to learn whether this is living up to its hype, whether it's something that I don't have to worry about. Like, what is this going to mean to me? I'm going to figure that out by playing around with it and having my hands on it.
It's funny, Ben, because for my job in recruitment, my day job, you can't go on YouTube and say, "How do you be better at recruitment?" It's not really a thing in my industry, but I'm learning how to do music production at the moment. I'm very
Mhm.
passionate about it, and one thing I've realized is actually YouTube content is amazing for learning. Some of the walkthroughs on there, you said there, when you're watching something and you're doing it side by side, so the video's next to you, you've got your plugin open, and you're pausing it every step of the way, and you learn. And after one or two attempts of doing that, you can do it on your own. So
Mhm.
I think some of the content for developers is similar to that, like you said, where you can follow along very easily to what they're showing you, as long as you have the tools that they've got as well. It's a great way to learn, as opposed to somebody shouting at you at work or, telling you what to do, but not giving you the actual tools on how to learn how to do it. I think
Yeah.
that's missing sometimes.
We miss the kinesthetic aspect because that's kind of the hardest part of the whole creation process. Even the content creation, the part that you'll struggle with is not necessarily, being able to talk to the camera for a few minutes. Like, anybody can do that, even with it. Like, if you have to cheat like me and use a teleprompter in a conversation, I'm fine. But when I'm just recording, gosh, it's like 7,500 takes because
So hard.
I can't speak anymore. It's weird, but like, you can find ways to make that part easy. The part of actually building the content and, like, let me get this thing working, and oh gosh, while I was recording, I had an error and now I have to troubleshoot, all of that stuff. Like, that's the part that's really engaging. And I actually learned this trick at Twilio. Sometimes you can inject a mistake into your presentation on purpose, because for the engineering persona, that's like catnip.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
We see a problem, we see something wrong, and we're like, "Actually, I know how to fix that."
That's
Tap,
yeah,
tap,
yeah.
tap. Suddenly,
Yeah, yeah.
they're engaged with your presentation, and instead of just a webinar where it's like, "Look at me, I clicked the button and it did the thing." No, like, when you stop and things go off the rails, all the engineers immediately attune. They're like, "What is that?" "Oh, I," and then it's like a race to see who can find the problem first. So, if you're looking for better engagement, sometimes fouling it up first is actually a win.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny you say that then because we do in-person meetups obviously as well. And some of the best talks we've had have been from people whose their demos have gone so badly wrong. You've got engineers shouting like, "Do this, do this, do this," and
Yep.
it's like it's the best. It's so funny. Obviously, being non-technical as well, I'm like, "What is going on here?" It's like 50-year-old men sitting around me shouting at like a 25-year-old speaker, going, "No, no!" It's so good. They're the
There's
best
a
types.
recurring joke in the tech space about if you ever really need the answer to a problem, and this has sort of gone away now because Stack Overflow has kinda died, right? But it used to be that if you needed the answer quickly, you go to Stack Overflow and you ask your question, and then you log in as a different account and answer it incorrectly,
No way.
because that's the way that, like, everybody wants to be there to fix it. That's what our brains do. Like, the engineer persona is pre-wired to see problems and fix them.
Wow, interesting. Hackathons, Ben.
Yes.
Hackathons, so I can't speak today. Talking of speaking on live things, I'm a prime example of I get really nervous about this, so my speech always messes up. So
Mhm.
excuse me, Ben, for the question there.
No
With
worries.
hackathons, Ben, do you do them in your current company? If so, how are they best ran? What are your thoughts on them?
I've managed to host one of them at my current role. There are some cultural differences that we're having to work out, but that's kind of a thing that I'm introducing is the idea of the hackathon as an incubator for new ideas or different ideas or even just accelerating learning. We've run into cases where uh, engineering teams that have sort of been forgotten about and left in the back corner for years on end suddenly come up for air, and they're like, "The whole world changed while we were out. I don't know what any of this stuff does anymore." And you have to re-educate because they've been so insulated for so long. And so when we can break those barriers down and get them to come back out, like a hackathon is a great way to do that. If you have somebody enthusiastic enough running it, like, it's going to take a ton out of you as the coordinator and it's really a performance in a lot of cases. You're putting yourself out there to be in front of the whole team and be like, "This is the way it's gonna go down, and here's how it's gonna roll." And coordinating that experience can be really mentally exhausting, but if you can do that on behalf, this goes back to that helper mentality, right? If I can do that and sacrifice in that way so that a dozen, 2 dozen engineers get the day to build something that they never would have had time for in normal work, then I've won. Like, that's my success measure.
I've heard of some amazing hackathons in the past 7 to 8 years, and one of my clients last year, I actually went to watch it happen, Ben. And I've never seen one live before, but I got invited to go and see a hackathon in like a small, they're like a data AI consulting firm in London. And they got
Mhm.
about 85 to 90 employees. So they split into like teams of 3 and 4. And it was almost like a competition. I know not everyone agrees with that, but they had a competition who can build the best project for this. And the amount of ideas that were on offer that day, they actually used one of their products to build that in one day or two. I think, sorry, across 2 days. Sorry, they built a
Mhm.
product they've now sold for like £2 million just from 2 days of work of getting heads together that don't work together normally, different ideas, different ways of thinking, being creative, and then going to market with that idea, and they sold the product for £2 million.
And now
So
you've seen the benefit, like, that's
yeah,
the entire reason why we ever invented the idea of a
yeah.
hackathon, mostly because in day-to-day running of an organization, especially at enterprise scale, everybody sort of has their day pre-planned. You have a massive wall of meetings, and you're going to dodge between the meetings and try to achieve something. You might get to write a little code, you might get to review a little code, whatever the case is, but it's like everything's sort of already pre-boxed that this is the way the organization's going to run. And with the hackathon, all the rules go out the window, all the walls come down. It's just a bunch of people in a room and something's going to come out. And even if you don't do the competition version, which is a cool thing, like I don't discount that at all. But even if you don't set it up as a competition between the teams, just the competition against the clock, knowing
Yeah,
that I only have 16 hours left to deliver, things happen when people get into those kind of mindsets.
I agree. Couldn't agree more, Ben. Um, so DevOps, Ben, that's obviously one thing that me and you both resonate with as
And
a term, shall we say? It's such a wide area, as we've discussed already.
sure.
Um, what makes DevOps harder in the regulated environments, aside from the silos that are obviously a thing?
Well, the silos tend to be the biggest challenge, but you can have those outside of regulated businesses too. With regulation space, everything just moves slower. The rules have been um, they've grown over time, and it's very much like tentacles that have come out of the ground, and they've held on to the way things are. And we keep wrapping procedure and process and tool mechanisms and everything around it. Has to be exactly the way we thought it was before. And DevOps in general changes that mindset. One big example here is the idea of separation of duties. So in a regulatory space, that becomes a big deal for auditors, like the people who, or I got to be careful the way I say this because it might steal my own thunder. Um, with the separation of duties, you can't have just one person going to production, right? I can't just take the code and push it to production on my own. I need collusion from some other person. But throughout history, we've actually misinterpreted that rule to mean that there is one person who is allowed to do the writing, and then there's another person allowed to do the deploying. And I don't know if you catch the distinction there, but it's really subtle. When you start to set it up that way, now I have to start building organizations around the idea of writing code and deploying code as separate organizations. And when you build them as separate organizations, they evolve in their own direction and they don't cross-pollinate anymore, because when they're cross-pollinated, there's the risk that somebody could be there in the middle and do both things. DevOps says you can do both things. You just need a partner in it. And being able to change that mindset, that's the hardest part, is changing the minds of people who have grown up in these rules saying, I absolutely know what this rule says. And then you come to the table and say, but technically this definition over here meets the same rule. Like you didn't mess up the rule. You just interpreted it a little different, and it gave you the ability to do something special.
Okay. How does security, compliance, and scale fit together within DevOps?
Hmm. Security, compliance, and scale fit together. Help me with that.
Maybe I've worded that a little bit wrong. I
Well,
think,
yeah, different words might help me figure out what I'm talking about.
yeah, I think I've worded that a little bit strangely, I think, Ben, to be honest with you. I guess how important is security, sort of scale and compliance in your environment, Ben, at the moment? Obviously, security is a big thing, right? In regulated environments, it's probably bigger than
Sure.
other areas and other industries. So compliance is obviously linked with security in a way, and then scalability what can only happen if it's secure and reliability is there. So I guess how does it fit together in that respect, if that makes sense?
So traditional security and compliance have been antagonists of the developer community for a long time. And we grew up, this is the natural evolution when two organizations diverge at some point, right? And you separated all the security concerns and compliance concerns from the developers. Well, the developers are over here developing. They've all been incentivized to deliver more things faster, like go as fast as possible, go, go, go. Security and compliance looks at that and says, things are changing so rapidly, we can no longer keep up. And so what do? They pump the organizational brakes. They show up in meetings and say, we can't do this because we have these rules to meet. And it becomes a point of contention. If DevOps is going to be successful in your company, it's going to include those folks in the journey. And you start over at the beginning and you say, yes, we want to be secure. What we need is for you to give me a way to do security things that fits within the idea of delivering quickly. Don't just put, you know, hurdles in the way and call that done. Like, it requires thoughtful engineering to plug that security mindset into what we're doing. That might mean just educating your developers to say, hey, if you write your code with a secure mindset, you're going to fulfill a lot of our needs. It might mean setting up the tooling in a way that gives you, and back to that example about collusion between two people. Do you actually need a security engineer to sign off on every code change? Probably not. But what you need is for somebody to have reviewed this code with the mindset of security in mind, like with the approach to security in mind, to say, hey, this needs to be done a certain way, or we need to think about this differently. Um, Being able to meet those needs, it can absolutely be done within the DevOps space. It just might require you to think differently about how you've defined some things up front.
Okay. Because Ben, there's so many areas within your job. You have knowledge in, so you tinker in a lot of different things, as you've already said before. I call it organized chaos. You call it something else. However, with burnout is a real thing. Burnout, I think, is a real thing. And some may say, but Ben, you're doing 30 things at once, and are you not going to feel overwhelmed with how many different, you know, bits you're doing? What would your answer be to those that may think that people like me and you, Ben, that maybe don't have a traditional way of doing one thing might burn out?
So for me, burnout happens when I lose motivation. It's not a factor of how much work I've been assigned so much as how much I'm enjoying what I'm doing. If I'm having a fun time with it, if I'm getting that internal thrill, I never burn out. On the other hand, when things start to be friction, like when you start to have those friction situations where things slow down because of whatever around you that you don't have the capacity to change, that's the part where burnout starts to creep in. The other thing, you made a point there about you're doing 30 things at once, and that's a common mistake that organizations make. They'll position their entire development staff in sort of a matrix where they can just toss all the project work into the matrix and
Give us a Ben.
keep it
Give us
on
a
top of
Ben.
that.
Give us a Ben.
Yeah. And I've actually seen things where they're like, what you do is you put out your project list and you throw things into the pile until people in the pile start screaming. I'm like, is that really a way that you want to run your business? I mean, technically that's going to keep you at the highest capacity possible, but you're going to break long before people scream. Any system that does queuing work, I don't know how much you've ever read. I was shocked a few years ago to discover that there's an entire branch of statistics called queuing theory. Um, that, like, can you imagine, like, your entire life's work is focusing on people standing in queues? But uh, they're statisticians. I can't speak for what motivates them. Um, but that idea of knowing that a system breaks down at the 75 to 80% range, like, that's where you start to notice you have a problem. And the reason that you heard of companies like Google in the past doing the 20% time was respecting that queuing theory boundary that says the throughput of your system is going to slow down exponentially beyond this point. and the idea of being able to organize your work in a way that keeps you below that boundary is more critical than I think most people realize.
Advice for engineers, Ben, that's one thing that I think we're really big on here at DevOps Site is to really try and get people into the industry and to learn the best they can as well from people like you, Ben, who have been doing this for so many years. Um, what is your advice to engineers that are curious about DevEx and DevRel? Because most people wouldn't think about, if they're at university, Ben, or college, they're not going to think about DevEx or DevRel. They've probably never even heard of what that means. Is there a space for people to go into that first, or do you recommend going into software engineering or infrastructure type work or ops work before they think about that?
So for the folks in school, don't think about DevEx and DevRel right out of the gate. Um, Focus on being a good engineer, focus on building something cool and developing those chops first. DevEx and DevRel become concerns later on when you're starting to look around the organization more. Like right out of school, you're going to be overwhelmed with the whole idea anyway of coming into an organization and being assigned work to do on whatever topic. So focus on that, do it well first. The best DevRels, the best DevX folks are the ones who got the dev title first. As far as people, throughout their career who are starting to look at a transition there, start with mentoring. Pick a junior on your team who seems promising. Like, hey, this person we just hired last year, they seem really cool. They seem like they're excited and motivated and want to do something special. Invest your time and energy in them. And the reason that I say doing this is because the mentoring process is just DevRel without the scale. The idea of becoming a DevRel later on is scaling that up to be a quote unquote mentor, maybe not, in the depth, but definitely in the breadth of a bunch of people. And so help the junior solve the problems. Um, Look for ways to encourage them to solve the problems on their own. But then use your experience as a way to highlight those friction points. And some of it is just, hey, I was doing some mentoring with so and so, and then you go back to senior leadership and say, I observed this friction point while I was doing this mentoring thing, and this is what we as a company need to fix to make that person successful. And of course, because now you're starting to push that to senior leadership, it's making all of us more successful because we're enabling not just the one person, like that was the person who helped us identify the problem, but we're going to fix it for everybody. And if
I
you
think I
get
really
into
appreciate that.
yeah, if
What's
you
up,
get
Ben?
into the cycle of doing that regularly and you find that that's fun, then DevRel and DevEx, focus in your career might be the right path for you. But absolutely, go be a dev first because there's a cool phrase that's been going around. I'm not sure where it came from. I need to do some research, but it says those without dirty hands are wrong. If you haven't kept your hands on the material and doing the work, then you don't have any business um, opining about how it should be.
There's a lot of people that are hands off that lead hands on teams. And I think
Yes.
if they've been there and done it before, then I think it's good. But if they completely go away from the tech, then I think it's hard to stay updated with stuff and how are they going to influence what tools you're using and how
Yes.
things should be done in this day and age because every year there's a new thing coming out and there's a new way of doing things that's better. AI being prime example of that. I mean, we use it for like 50% of our day, probably a lot of us do, probably more.
Mhm.
So I think people that haven't been hands on for 5 years and they're still leading a team of even 10 engineers that are hands on, how are they meant to lead by example if they don't know what they're talking about?
Exactly.
Full stop.
Like, I couldn't add anything to that.
Yeah, yeah.
You
No, I
nailed it.
meant literally full stop. So like, same for my career as well. If someone hasn't done what I've done, how can you respect them if they haven't got the knowledge that you can learn from them? So I think it's really important. Um, especially in engineering as well. Um, Ben, what excites you about the next 12 months? What are you really looking forward to in work, outside of work? What excites you out of work generally as well?
So right now, a ton of my free time is going into developing season 5 of the Adventures of Blink. That's my YouTube channel slash blog. I'm sure your editor will post a bunch of links someplace. I'm
Indeed.
not sure wherever the links go.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess this is up on YouTube, so down there someplace. Go find me and check me out. Check out the channel. The Adventures of Blink is a way for me to do content creation, practice. Like I want to do more in this kind of space, being able to have conversations and build content for folks. It's also a way for me to keep myself fresh in terms of I'm trying to build things, I'm trying to expand, whatever I've learned. Um, And I find that building in public creates enough of that stress that says, hey, you really got to get this right. If I just try to do a side project in the corner, I'll find a reason to be lazy and move on with life. But when I know, oh, I'm doing this for the channel, I have to deliver, I have a deadline. And so that's been enough to keep me, more focused on the path. Um, the YouTube channel is mostly building things. I try to keep those as interactive as possible. Like you can follow along and build this thing with me. The blog tends to be a little bit more of just general writing and talking about industry concerns and DevEx and DevRel, type things.
How often do you post blogs, Ben? The written articles and stuff.
So the YouTube channel itself gets 2 10-episode seasons per year. I do one in the spring and one in the fall, for the Northern Hemisphere folks. Excuse me. Um, I'll try that again.
That's
So,
fine.
in the on the YouTube channel, I do 2 seasons a year, one in the spring, one in the fall for the Northern Hemisphere folks. Um, 10 episodes apiece, and like the entire season is a single build. It's like at least it's kept topically connected. Um, the blog is something that I write mostly in the off season. So when I don't have videos going out, then I try to do a weekly cadence there of just talking about whatever's on my mind. This past week was a fun one on the fundamentals, and as I look toward this weekend is the Super Bowl here in the U.S., so we're all about to sacrifice everything to watch a
Oh, wow.
football game on Sunday night. But I was thinking about what it means to practice for something like that, and how that practice mentality applies in the software engineering world. So check out that post. It was the fundamentals.
Can you send that, Ben, to me, and I'll post it on our channel as well, on our
Definitely.
LinkedIn? That'd be great. I'll share. That's not a problem. I'll share that with our community as well. Um, but yeah, I guess, Ben, in terms of, people can follow you on your YouTube channel. You got LinkedIn as well, which I'll tag that below too. Your blog channel.
Mhm.
Is there anywhere else they can find you? Anywhere else they can get in touch with you? Or
That is pretty much where I hang out. That's the easiest place to find me and get, in touch with me, and then we'll move on from there. But that's where I want you to start. So don't be a stranger.
nice. Ben, it's been great chatting, by the way. Thanks for coming on the podcast today. I had my tooth taken out 2 days ago, so I have got a very swollen mouth. So I've really tried to get my mouth open on the podcast today. Um, so yeah,
Well, then you get
if any
extra
questions were a
credit.
little bit,
That's hazard
sorry.
pay, man.
Yeah, Ben, you got to do it. I didn't want to, leave you hanging again because I know that I wasn't well 2 weeks ago. So I think, yeah, it's been really good chatting with you, and I'd love to work me to become more of a part of our community as well. We'll chat about that
Certainly.
off camera. Um, but yeah, it's been great. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, man.